I go back to this one scenario where I was working for a guy and I was older than him. I was more experienced than him. He was brand new to the job, but he was my boss. And he shows up to my desk. I want to say it was maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he gives me an assignment. And very sternly, he says, "Get it done. End of business today." Now, I'll never forget this. And I just remember how my heart sank. I thought, well, I've got this time constraint putting on me. And I thought, if he would have just asked me to get
Mm.
this done, I would have had it done by 2 o'clock. I would have had it done by 3 o'clock. So I decided that I wanted to do it differently. I've got a lot of people that have helped me with that. My father is a good relational leader. Don't get me wrong, he can drop the hammer when need be, but a terrific relational leader. And then there's a lot of bad examples that you can draw from and say, I'm not going to do it that way. That's a specific way that I'm going to skip.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Manager to Manager. If you have been listening to the podcast for a while, or even if you have seen me live, you know that I say that an excellent people leader is someone who can balance relationships and results. And you've also heard me say that sometimes we typically lead from one place or the other, and sometimes we need to borrow a strength and offer a strength. So you might be a relational manager who really is able to bring culture and connection to your team, or you might be a manager who can really help their team thrive in execution and getting things done. It's not one or the other. We typically need both. And so I'm excited because over the next two episodes, I'm going to bring you two amazing people leaders who excel in one of these areas. And what I'm going to challenge you to do is to be listening to the episodes to figure out what you can borrow from each of them to pull into your own practice so that you're somebody who leads from both relationships and results. So today's guest, I am so excited to introduce you to, is Bob Schon. And he is someone that came to me via referral. I was at a conference, and whenever I meet owners or senior leaders, I always ask them who on your team is an excellent people leader who you think could share with others. And so I excitedly got an email back from one of the founders who said, "There's someone on my team who's doing amazing things in leadership, and you should definitely talk to him." So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today.
I am excited for the listeners to get to know more about you. So please do tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us what you do today, a little bit about the leadership work that you do.
I've been in ministry for 20 years. I youth pastored for a small Baptist church that grew up and got a little bit bigger through things. And then I went on and senior pastored a really small church in the state of Indiana. And then I took a few years off and actually came to the company that I'm at presently, and I started in the ground up. And then I left that for about 4 years, and I was on our pastoral staff again as our outreach and hospitality minister. And I love people, and my steps were just funneled so that I would come back to A1 Pest Control and be a part of the team here as the manager of the sales team, the sales director, so to speak. And I've been helping a lot out with the leadership end of things, specifically within much of our company, the tech meetings and the branch meetings. And it's just been a really good stint here. I've only been here about 7 months right about now, and it's been great to be back.
I'm sure they're glad that you're back and in your 7 months have made such an impact that they wanted to share you with the rest of the world. So good for
Oh,
them.
goodness.
So, one of the things that stood out to me when you and I were just doing our prep call was that you mentioned that you are a relational people leader. I'd love to start there and just maybe share with the listeners, what does that mean to you when you think of like relational people leadership? What is that?
I think as a kid, I thought being leader was being in charge of things, and there's definitely an aspect to that. But when you're in leadership, you're given that decision-making power and even some authority but make no mistake, you are part of a outstanding support cast, and your role is vital and needful. And as much as I can mandate that the work would be done, I would much rather model or even mentor that. I think that's vital. We're always trying to find potential. We're always trying to find performance, but ultimately, I like to find something deeper than that. And I find that it works well. I go back to this one scenario where I was working for a guy and I was older than him. I was more experienced than him. He was brand new to the job, but he was my boss. And he shows up to my desk. I want to say it was maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he gives me an assignment. And very sternly, he says, "Get it done. End of business today." Now, I'll never forget this. And I just remember how my heart sank. I thought, well, I've got this time constraint putting on me. And I thought, if he would have just asked me to get
Mm.
this done, I would have had it done by 2 o'clock. I would have had it done by 3 o'clock. So I decided that I wanted to do it differently. I've got a lot of people that have helped me with that. My father is a good relational leader. Don't get me wrong, he can drop the hammer when need be, but a terrific relational leader. And then there's a lot of bad examples that you can draw from and say, I'm not going to do it that way. That's a specific way that I'm going to skip.
Yes. I think a lot of us come to people leadership from either I'm going to emulate something that somebody did. I always think about a particular people leader early in my career who actually did not know that he had become a role model for me. So there's habits and practices and things I do with my team that I learned from reporting up through his chain that I was like, I'm going to be like that. The way that
Good.
he made me feel empowered to do my work, that's what I want to give to other people. So there's that. And I think we do all have always have a couple of stories of people that were like, so when I get in charge, that will not be what I'm going to do.
Oh, yeah, rude awakening there. Just get ready for it.
Yeah, get
Uh,
ready for it. But I love the fact that you pointed out you would have had it done earlier and you would have had it done had he not even needed to give you the deadline, had he approached you in the right way, that you wouldn't have even needed the end of the day part. You probably would have had it to him before he can deliver. And I do think that sometimes people forget that discretionary effort, people can give you more than you ask for, but the relationship you have with them is typically the catalyst for that.
I'd rather it be that way. I think there's a time when you can't mentor somebody. They refuse to be mentored, and you just have to say, here is the line in the sand. It's
Hmm.
not my favorite. It
Yeah.
has to be done. But I would much rather lead as a leader, as a mentor, to see them where they're supposed to be. When we spoke initially, I know I gave you sports reference after sports reference. You probably thought, man, this guy's
Feel free to
crazy. But
throw one in.
I'm not from the Nick Saban School of Football,
Yes.
but the reason that Alabama's football team has endured for so long is because of his leadership. And he said this, he said, leadership is influence, and influence is getting people to do what they don't want to do to achieve what they need to get done. And I love that. I love that. We're aiming to steer people in the direction that they should be going. And sometimes they don't even know what it is that they're going towards. Sometimes they don't
Mhm.
understand what it is that they need to get from here to there. But so much can be achieved through relationship.
I would agree with that. And I have found that the better the relationship is, the fewer times I have to be extra assertive in what needs to happen.
Yep.
So when I have good team relations, it allows me to lead, to your point, from influence more than authority. How, if you had to just like gauge for yourself, how often do you have to go to the bucket of because I said so? Or do you
Um,
feel like your style allows you to do more of the mentoring and the influencing that you want to do?
Goodness. I don't do that often.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting. I usually like the results of how it happens. Very
Hmm.
few are the times that I end with that and say, well, that went poorly.
Right.
You look at somebody, and so the instance the other day, I said to the person, "You're one of my best friends, and this is the reason that I can say to you, don't do this again.
Hmm.
The line in the sand, don't cross it. Do you understand?" I said twice, "Do you understand?" And
Yeah.
I said, "I understand." In a different scenario, I had to write somebody up.
Hmm.
It's never fun. You talk about somebody losing position or losing traction within the company. And at the end of it, he said, "Thank you." He said,
Yes.
"Thank you. You give me good feedback. I see what I have to work on. Thank you." It doesn't always end that way.
But you said something I think is really interesting because I think sometimes people get confused with being a relational manager and in some of the traits of that. So like being highly empathetic, leading from a place of service. I think sometimes people will think that means that you're a pushover or that you don't hold people accountable or that you don't draw the line in the sand. And I don't necessarily think that's the truth. I think that the quality of your relationship lets you also have those tough conversations
Mhm.
because they trust you and because they know that it's coming from a good place. There have been times where I've had to put somebody on a performance improvement plan. It was not my favorite conversation. But I do think what made that conversation go so much better was the relationship we had established before that. And
Sure.
so, yeah, I was able to say, listen, this is not where either of us wants to be right now. And he was able to trust that when I said, like, this is not a plan to get you out the door, this is a plan to help you be better. I do
Mm.
think our relationship is what gave him the trust that I really meant that and was trying to support him in being successful.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm listening to your show. Before our first email, I listened to one of the shows, and you seem to bring out the best in people. I'd not heard the phrase people leader before. I'm sure that's closely original with you. I like that. And it's part of that relationship. Just the boss. I'd much rather be the leader, you know? I'd much rather be the mentor in the whole thing.
Yes.
And it's a journey. So when you get to the spot that you have to write somebody up or you have to address a poor behavior, and one of the things I try to do is just try to lead with a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what happened on Thursday and what was the scenario. Usually there's a bit of a blind spot with the person that you're speaking with. You're trying to get them to see the perspective of the customer that gave the complaint or the fellow employee that gave the complaint. But help me to understand that. Give me clarity on this.
Yes.
And I found that to be a particularly good tool in dealing with relations.
Yeah, just being curious about people.
Yeah.
Now, you are rolling out something with your team that talks about relationships, both with the people that you work with, but also how you relate to your customers. I'm just curious. Would you share that with us?
So I'm in charge of the sales team. They're my direct reports. I see them often. We speak every day with each of them. And so one of the things that we've tried to work through is to get our technicians to be salesmen, not
Mm,
full-time salesmen, but at least to be a part of the sales aspect of things. They can sell a basic service. They can take what could be a large sale and give it to somebody else. And then ultimately, they're selling themselves. They're the expert, they're the advisor, they're the person with the experience. And so I've been working through a program, and there's some operative words that fit this program really well, but it's dealing with just what I've called a magnetic personality. Stephen Covey probably came up with that. It's just all there is to it. But a magnetic personality
borrowed.
where you walk into the room, and because you're there, people feel better about the fact that they're there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of operative words. I haven't even gotten through all the operative words with my teams yet, but I've been working through it. We're two-thirds of the way done with it, but it's not going to end. You know, it's one of those things where we're always getting better and we're always growing and really evolving with things. I'm sure you want a couple of these words, right?
I would love to hear a couple of the words. Yes.
My favorite word is the word optimism.
Okay.
And
I
I'm
got
sure
it.
you can tell by now I'm definitely an optimistic person. But a person walks into the room and they see varying perspectives, and I want to do my best to see the best. And I've said this, if you can see the best, then you can achieve the best. I don't think that that is intended to be the power of positive thinking at all. If you can find the vision of this, then I think that you can achieve this.
Yes.
So we look for it and we find the best in every room. I have difficulty with just a handful of people in life where I say I can't find the best in that
I can't
person.
find it.
Ultimately, we're aiming for optimism. I guess some of my other words. So I spoke just a minute ago. I said the word potential and performance. And I did an interview just a minute ago with one of our future employees. We'll probably hire him in just a minute. But we aim for potential being reached and we're charting performance. But ultimately we want to give to somebody something greater than that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a passion and a purpose. And so those are two of my big words, the passion and the purpose. And I can't give to somebody a passion and say, here's what your passion should be. The person has to figure that out themselves. They've got to figure out that purpose themselves. But I've often told the story, and I don't know where I heard this the first time. Probably Stephen Covey is my guess. But he talked about a child going up to a construction site. And so there's three people at work, and the kid goes up to the first guy and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the guy says, I'm building a wall." And so the kid moves on to the next guy and he says, What are you doing?" And the guy says, "Oh, I'm laying brick." And he goes to the third guy and he says, Hey, what are you doing?" And the guy says, "Oh, I've been working on this project. It's going to be a cathedral. And now I'm just a few bricks into this, but I'm building and I'm building, and someday it's going to be finished. And when it's finished, I intend to go to church here, and my kids will go to church here, and generations on to come are going to go to church here as well. And I'm so excited about seeing the finished product that is here. So the guy laying brick, I mean, he had a job, right?
Yes.
That was his job. And the guy who built walls, that was his vocation. That's what he did for a living. But the last guy found his passion, the thing
Mm-hmm.
that he was truly excited about. And so I've told our teams that if you can get to the spot where you're passionate about what you're doing right here and right now, you'll be that person in the room. You'll be that person that encourages everybody that walks in the room, and people will be better because you're there.
I love
Uh,
that so much. I love how you exude this energy. I think you said optimism, and I'm going to walk back a minute to when you said like how people should feel in your presence. People should feel calm and happy to be a part of things. And I think sometimes we underestimate how important that is as a people leader for being the person who creates the space where people feel that way. To create the space where people come in and go, I actually am, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be on this team. And then the second thing that you said that really sticks with me is there are people in different phases. Some people it is vocation, some people it is a job, some people it is a passion. But it's the curiosity that you mentioned that helps us understand the difference.
mhm,
And when we find people who have a passion, the ability to connect that passion to what we're doing. We always talk about meaningful work in the engagement space, and we talk about one of the drivers for people is to have meaningful work, and it has been popular to say, and the way that you do that is by telling them how their work connects to the mission as if that's what people care about. And in some instances they do, but really what people care about is what they care about.
mhm,
And if you can be curious and figure that piece out, if you can figure out what their passion is and then connect that passion to what they get to do every single day, you're
mhm,
creating a win-win for everybody because they are building that cathedral and they can see it with pride their work in a place they want to
mhm.
be. And whoever owns the company where we're building cathedrals over here is a happy camper too.
No doubt. Yeah, that's job number one, right?
But it's the balance. And a truly good people leader can help somebody figure out like if where in this is your passion? What is it you do? Because let's face it, in the world of work, there are ups, there's downs, there are good moments and bad moments. But I do think that it's the passion that gets us past those hard moments. That if you can see the vision of what you're creating and what you're bringing to the table, it does help you to look past some of those bumpy roads.
Oh, you're right. That's good. So, in our first conversation, you said something that struck me, and I've heard it before. You talked about us being the thermostat and not the thermometer.
Yes.
And as I approached one of the meetings this week, I even thought that. So I started out and I put up the logo in my background here, and I've got the logo for the meeting. And the first thing I said was, I'm so glad I have a job. I'm so glad that I have a good place to work. So some people don't have jobs right now. Some people don't have
Hmm.
places to work, and I have a
Yes.
job, and I love my job, and I hope that you love this job as well. So
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
right, 100%.
I think it's important because when we are in charge of a team, right? When we are the people leader on a team, it goes without saying that we are in charge. And people will model and they will behave in ways where we set the example, which is why I think, as you mentioned, sort of optimism being one of your words,
Hmm.
it's so important because they're going to take cues from you.
Hmm.
One of the things I've learned over the years is if I show up to a meeting and I laugh, other people will laugh. If it's like
Sure.
it never fails. If I show up to a room and I'm in a cranky mood, people will withdraw because, oh, she's
Uh-huh.
in a cranky mood, right? And then I have also found that what I say and do spreads. So I have Kamaria isms. If someone's on my team, they know Kamaria is going to say it's okay to call the baby ugly. Kamaria is going to say, we don't send our baby out into the street with mismatched bows, which basically means like we call our things ugly in here so they won't do it out there. And
Right.
I'll hear them, randomly saying, well, we don't send our baby out. And I know that is traveling. So I know that I'm setting the tone just by what I do every day consistently. And
Good.
I'm wondering, like, do you have Bobisms? Are there things that you say or do
Oh,
that have
goodness.
spread?
Yes, ma'am. So I told you about pastoring the small Baptist church in Indiana. I loved that area. I love those people for sure. It was exactly where I was supposed to be. But I'm telling you, February in Indiana, in the middle of cornfield that's been cut down, it's just brown and white from the snow and the snow drifts and all of this. And so a church that runs 50 or 60 people on a Sunday might be down to 12 or 15 on a good Sunday in the month of February. And so my sons, I have four sons, we would show up and we'd go to shovel the snow. And my kids are like, "Do you think anybody's going to be at church today?" And so my catchphrases were this: "We're going to be okay. It's going to be all right." And so some of the struggles of a smaller church that we had, the same questions would be asked. Are we going to make it another season? Are we going to make it another year? Some of the older folks in the congregation may have passed on. Some of the pillars in the community, the pillars in our congregation. And really, the answer that I would often give was so simple, but we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. I mean, I guess that's fueled a lot of optimism in my life. I think ultimately it's going to be okay. It may not be the response or the results that I wanted, but we're going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
We'll do our best. We'll get through this. And if it means picking up the pieces and taking it to the next step, we're still going to be okay. So somebody calls me and now I'm now I'm in the sales world and says, I didn't get my sales commission. They know what I'm going to say. We're going to be okay. We'll get through this.
We'll get through this.
We'll figure it out and it'll be
And,
okay.
yeah, and what stands out to me from that is there's so much change in work. There's so many
Mhm.
bumps in the world. I mean, especially now, right? You think about disruption, you think about what AI is bringing
Mm.
to the workplace. You
Right.
think companies buy things, they sell things.
Mm.
There's so many transitions that people go through that even in our roles as people leaders, whether it's official or unofficial, we become like counselors to people through what's happening with changes.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a small change, like, hey, you're getting a new territory, which for salespeople, sometimes that's like yay, and sometimes that's like no, thank you.
Sure.
Um, it could be again, I've navigated several layoffs and have had to say to
Mm.
people, it's going to be all right, it's going to be
Right.
okay. And it's not necessarily always the outcome that we want, but that doesn't mean that that affects the overall arch of your life and career. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you may not work here anymore,
Mm.
but you're going to be okay. And
Mm.
when I think about what drives that for me is the thought of preparing them. The work that we do, so when we think about like our passion and we think about our performance,
Mm.
it's the performance that makes it okay
Huh.
because you're not going to lose that thing in you that makes you successful because this role ended. This one situation didn't work out, but that doesn't mean you're not going to work out. And I think it's our job to coach and reinforce that over time. So when people hear it's going to be all right, it's going to be okay, what I found is that like we may be saying it in one instance, but if we
Mhm.
say it enough, they're going to transfer that
Mhm.
to another difficult situation that they're having and they're going to internalize it and then they're going to say to themselves, well, this isn't what I wanted, but it's going to be
Mhm.
all right and it's going to be
Yeah.
okay.
And we're going to get through it. It will be okay. I know it's so simple. Some people would call it trite, but we're coaching optimism. I've worked for people that were not optimistic, and it becomes a very miserable life very quickly.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we coach that in our teams? I'm passionate about being optimistic. Is that okay?
I think we need more of that, to be honest with you. And I do think it's important because recognizing the tone and tenor that we set for our teams. It's not always easy, but I think that if we can get people to see silver linings, if we can get people to see and reframe things, it keeps them moving forward. I always tell people, I feel like I'm a corporate warrior. Like corporate America is difficult and working in and of itself. Like it's not a cakewalk, but the role that we play is to keep people to help them stay motivated, to help them see the bigger picture. Because when you're in the day-to-day of things, sometimes you can miss the big picture and you can focus on what's happening in the moment. But I think as people leaders, our goal is to help people continue to see the big picture and to believe in themselves and what's possible and
Hmm.
what they can create. So when I go back to your analogy about laying bricks and I'm building a wall versus I'm building a cathedral, I think the optimism of being able to see what you don't see today,
Ooh.
to the vision of what you don't see today is what keeps people moving. And so when I think about it from even a tactical conversation of I ask my teams, what do you want to be? What do you want to do?
Mm.
What is your passion? What drives you? The optimism of helping them get there is what pushes them through performance conversations and meetings with people they don't like and those types of things. But if you can just say, okay, well, that conversation didn't go the way you wanted. But maybe what we learned from that conversation is how to navigate conversations that don't go the way we want. I remember having someone on my team. She hears this episode, she'll know I'm talking about her because one of the things that I used to send her out into the world to do was tell people no.
Oh,
So I
nice.
saw tremendous potential in her. And I knew that she had real leadership capabilities, but she wasn't always comfortable with people not being happy.
Hmm.
And part of leadership, unfortunately, is difficult conversations.
Sure.
And so I would
Sure.
say, I need to go tell these people no. And she's like, can you tell them nope, I cannot do it. You've got to go tell them no.
Uh-huh.
And because I see how smart you are, I see your ability to see a problem very clearly and to get to solution. And you have the ability to bring people along the way. But even in that, there will be times when you have to deliver hard messages. So
Oh,
in
sure.
order for us to get you to where you're going, sis, go tell
Yeah.
those people no. And she pushed through. And so when I
Good.
hear from her and she tells me how she's doing and now she's leading her own function, it makes me so proud of her because I knew that she could do it. But it's the
Mhm.
optimism of, girl, we're going to push past what's difficult today to get you to that wonderful place that we both know you can get to.
Good. Well, how many times have we intended for other outcomes and it didn't go the way that we intended? And yet we look back weeks, months, sometimes even years later and say, I understand why that didn't go that way.
Mm.
Or I'm so glad it didn't go the way that I intended it to go because there was something different that was down the pathway, down the pipeline for me. And
Yes,
I think I've experienced it so many times in life.
that's a really good point. I think someone said sometimes you can do all the right things and still come to a different outcome, but the outcome is where you were supposed to be.
Hmm. That's really wise.
Yeah, it
Really
is. It
wise.
is. And I
Hmm.
do think that's part of our roles is to try to bring balance to that, to bring balance to what's happening in our teams, around our teams, to help them see perspective. So, yeah, it's hard. I'm curious, how do you go about building the relationships? I think getting to a place of trust where people see Bob is the kind of the calm in the storm. He is the person who's going to give us this optimism. I'm wondering, is there just an approach that you take with your teams that helps you to build those relationships?
Well, that's definitely a journey. I think a lot of times revolves around food or coffee. At least it's a good
Yes.
starting point. But no, seriously, I do ride with somebody on my team quite often. And I really find that approach of asking a lot of questions. What would you do in this scenario? How would you approach this sales opportunity? And then somewhere in there, there's a personal question. Always keep them guessing, right? But
Yes.
so where do you see yourself in 3 years? Can you continue to be a territory manager for the next 5 years? Sometimes it's personal. Have you invested in the company's retirement program yet? No, I haven't done that. Well, here's the way that you get there. But I guess this next word goes really well, and it's one of my operative words. It's the word authentic or
Mm-hmm.
sincerity. And I've purposed a long time ago that I would never act. I would never be something that I wasn't with the people that I had leadership with. I'm going to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask somebody the question, hey, tell me about your family situation right now, there has to be, from my perspective, a genuine concern for them. And so I think that relationship is built out of a genuineness. And you can't fake that. Yeah, you can cultivate it, but people can always tell when you're fake, when you're trying to be something that you're not. So I try to bring to the table just who I am, as quirky as I am, as Midwestern D nasal sound that I have with all of that, this weird accent or whatever it is in the South. But just be who you are and be relatable. And again, going back to those questions, ask lots of questions. Help me to understand your perspective, your position, what it is that you're facing, how it is that you're going to deal with these situations.
We were at Pest World. I was sitting at a table with these gentlemen from a different company, and in our session, there were these coins that had a saying on them. And
Hmm.
so our activity was to read and discuss the coins and what we thought each of the sayings meant. And in true Kamaria fashion, we did not follow instructions. Instead, we thought the coins were really pretty and we started taking pictures of them with all the sayings. And one of the things that was really cool was that one of the people at our table took all the coins and he turned them toward him so that he could take a picture with all of them, the words of the different
Uh-huh.
coins. And then he turned the coins toward each of us so that we could take a picture with them. However, our takeaway was how cool it was that somebody was considerate enough to know that we would see the coins from different perspectives. And I thought
True.
that was really cool because what you just said was that like you have to ask them like how they see the world, how they might do something. And it's like that acknowledgement that we might have a perspective from where we sit. And again, we sit in our leadership space or we sit in our offices, but the people that we lead have a perspective from where they sit. And just taking that moment to acknowledge, I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear more from you is, I think, the embodiment of curiosity, but
Mhm.
because you're acknowledging that you might see it differently or have a different need or a different thought than the one that I'm having. And I want to know what that is so that I can lead you effectively and I can know more about you.
Isn't there so much to learn from that vantage point?
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
amazed at what my team teaches me when you give to them the license to say what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say to people often, speak unrestricted. You have a license to speak freely. And some leaders are very afraid of that. I mean, they're just
Yes.
absolutely crippled by the idea of somebody coming and speaking their mind. And obviously, the ground rules. Don't swear, don't throw fists,
Right.
we're not going to throw hands here, but you have the opportunity to speak freely. And so I've got 12 people on my sales team, and each of them does it 100% differently from the person that sits next to them. I've learned sales tactics from each of them. I've learned things to do, things not to do, a couple of those, but things that we should be doing. I've learned a lot about perspective. In fact, I've learned a lot of the words that I've had up there. I've learned more about myself
Hmm.
by being willing to ask those questions and then genuinely listen.
When we think about relationships, relationships are a two-way street.
Right.
And we often think about people leadership as kind of like, I'm up here and you're down there, or I'm out front and you're following. But I've learned so much from my teams. Like they
Mhm.
give just as much to me as I give to them. I'm always sad when I move on from a team because I'm just like, I'm gonna miss you all so much because
Right.
I have learned so much from them. And it is this two-way relationship of me making them better, but them making me better at the same
Mm.
time. And I think when we think of it that way and we see it as relationship and treat it as such, I think people are open to share what they want you to know. You kind of create that space. And when we start to talk about again those sort of drivers of engagement and we talk about people doing meaningful work, what people really want is to know they matter. And when you listen to them and take in their suggestions, they do learn that they matter and then they show up differently to the relationship. I think that pride that they take in their voices being heard and their suggestions being put into action make them want to do more. There was something else that you said that I think that also stood out to me was, and I don't want the listeners to miss this part, which is connections happen through the work. So sometimes I think we think that in order to build a relationship, you've got to stop and have a pizza party or you have to stop and do something else. But you mentioned your ride-alongs. And I have found that like one of the best ways that I have been able to build relationships is just by working side by side with people.
Mhm.
Not on the full project, not on everything they do, but there's always a something that I do with them, whether it's, hey, let's just spend a few minutes together working on this outline, or hey, let's go to this meeting together. I just want to be able to support you in it. That there are ways when you make time to do something like a ride along, which I know is more common in sales than it is other roles, that gives you the opportunity to ask those questions and to be curious in the flow of what's happening. So you don't always have to take that out. And I'm mentioning this because I know sometimes a lot of managers will say, well, I don't have time. You do.
You got to make that time. You got to make
Yes.
that time. I would say that often as a pastor, that there's no greater way to grow together than serving together. As I know we're not serving necessarily, but we're at least laboring together,
But
and
aren't we
that's
serving our
growth.
customers together?
We are. We are. Maybe it's a little bit different perspective there, but yeah, absolutely. You talked about the relational leader, and so anybody that's from my team that listens to this is gonna probably hold this against me, but my boss said to me a number of years ago, talked about serving in relationships and that your team would fall on their sword because of the relationship that you have with them. And obviously, we're not aiming for that. That's not ultimately what's happening
Right.
there, but it is so refreshing to think that I have a relationship with the people that ultimately I'm in charge of. We taught accountability this week in our meeting with all of the branches, and ultimately I'm accountable to my owner, I'm accountable to my boss, but I'm also accountable to the team that I serve. And I'll answer for their missteps. I'll answer for what goes on that shouldn't. I'll also oftentimes get credit for what they do and do well. And in the end, I have a responsibility to say this, and I will always say this, and I believe it with great sincerity. I have an amazing team. So we celebrated this week. We went to Longhorn. We all got steaks, and it was such a great time. And I had just a small window to say something. I said something to our owner. I said, "Thank you for hosting, Bruce. This is an amazing, amazing lunch. You're such a good cook." And then I said, "I can't imagine a team any better than this." And my team knows that I meant that with
Yes.
everything that I have. I'm not getting sentimental. I'm speaking the truth. I'm so thankful for the team that I have. And relationship is what makes all of that.
Goodness.
I'm happy for that.
A beautiful sentiment, a perfect place to end the interview. I do want to put one small point in there. Even the celebration, right? At the
Mhm.
point of looking for what's right with your team. I think that whenever I teach a session, we always start with tell me what's working well. Tell me something your team is doing well. Because sometimes it's so easy to focus on the blip. We're always looking for like the thing that's not going well. But when you are deliberate in looking for what's good on your team, you'll find it. And
Absolutely.
the more you find it and stop to celebrate it, the more I absolutely believe your team is going to rise to the occasion. And so it's a very different way. I think there is something special to leading from a relational place and from an optimistic place and a place of lifting people up. And I just think people can use it right now. So thank you so much for this time. This has been
Thank you.
such a delightful conversation.
I 100% agree. Thank you for the opportunity today.
If someone wanted to reach out to you and just learn more about your approach to leadership, is LinkedIn the best way to do that?
Oh, sure. That would work just fine. Yeah, that's a good
Awesome.
place.
I will put your LinkedIn contact in the show notes. And just on behalf of the listeners and myself, really, thank you for this conversation, for just really exemplifying what it means to be a relational leader. And if there was just maybe one or two points you would leave listeners with, just think something they can take away and try with their own team, what would that be? Like, how can they be more Bob-like in their approach to people leadership?
Oh, goodness. We're always placing ourselves in a position to inspire our teams to do the best that they possibly can. And if I get home at the end of the day and I can write in my journal that this is what I did, then you're a success. We didn't talk about our numbers at all. Our numbers are off the chart. I can't brag about it enough. I'm not going to brag about it.
But just know that we are
Yeah,
keeping the lights on.
yeah, and beyond that. But I think it stems from the relationship, and I'm so thankful for the position that I've been put in. I'm hoping that it continues to help people in their growth process.
I love that. Well, again, on behalf of the listeners, thank you for this time. And if you are listening, I want to just leave you with one or two things. The first being, as Bob mentioned earlier, just try to remain curious about your team members. So find those times when you are working, whether it's your version of a ride along, whether it's a project, to just spend some quality time with your people and get to know them, ask them questions, figure out what their passions are to the best of your extent, try to align that to what works. And then look for the bright spots, figure out your own Kamaria isms or Bob isms that are going to help your team know that it's okay to be heard, to share their thoughts. And then finally, look for those moments to celebrate with your team. There's lots of ups and downs and bumps, but if we look for the good things, the positive things, our teams will rise to the occasion. So don't forget to celebrate. So, on behalf of Bob and myself, thank you so much for listening to the episode. And until next time, please take care of yourself and each other.